Hello, and welcome to another comprehensive design review of a Magic the Gathering set. Today we're talking about Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths. Welcome. This is something we've done before in the past, but first let's introduce ourselves. My name is Carl Duzette, also known as Zerapath in the custom Magic community. I'm an amateur Magic designer enthusiast of many years. Done a lot of my own sets and projects. I'm also enthusiast for game design generally, and yeah, this is the third one of these that I've done. And with me, I have Tommy. Would you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tommy. This is only my second of these, so that will be exciting. An amateur game designer and longtime Magic player. I think I started around Ice Age. I think we both started around Ice Age, right? We're both grumpy old Magic
Yeah,
players.
yeah, Ice Age in
Uh,
like sixth grade for me.
I think it was also sixth grade for me, so we must be very close in
Yeah.
age. Like, I think I first saw Magic in the fifth grade and wanted it, but then it was sold out
Mhm.
everywhere for forever. And so I think it was like almost a year before I actually hunted it down.
Mm.
Main formats, I'll go ahead and say I'm a big draft player, so we'll talk a lot about limited, and I think you're also a big limited player. I also have been playing a lot of Commander lately, although I've not gotten an opportunity to play with many of the Ikoria cards in Commander because Commander does not work so well with COVID. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm also a big cube player, so a lot of my sort of Magic design is in curating specific cubes, and so I view a lot of cards from the point of view of what does this card do in a curated limited format.
Yeah. I also like you suggested. I'm mostly a limited player. I really enjoy draft. One of the things my wife teases me about is I only like games where there's a game before the game, where like there's the draft portion and then you play the game. Games like where the way you set up the game and deck building, I really enjoy that. I think the deck building aspect of Magic is my favorite, and so having that be part of the process is something I really enjoy. So I like draft for that reason, but that's also why I like constructed. I don't play it as much. I've been playing standard on arena just to grind out currency and also to make some janky decks here and there. So not a spike by any means in standard, but I have some experience there. And I also like commander, but I have played very little of it. I like making the decks, but have not actually played that many games of it. Um, so yeah, that's generally our Magic experience. What have you been up to lately? Your personal life? Anything fun or exciting?
Let's see. Lately, I have been so I should say I was doing tons of Ikoria drafts, and I was very fortunate that I did well enough that I did not have to dirty myself by playing standard at all in order to sort
Uh,
of like keep up doing the Ikoria drafts. But then Monster Train came out, and since then, Monster Train has taken completely up the space that Magic was taking in my life. So, although I will have very positive things to say about Ikoria, and I probably did 50 or so drafts, maybe more, I have in recent times been playing Monster Train. So, high recommendation to anyone who likes games with cards that do stuff.
yeah,
How
you
about
and
you?
um, I have not been playing Monster Train, but I have been haunted by uh, a supposition that I probably should start playing because you and Trevor just keep talking in chat like, "Oh, Monster Train is so interesting. This is such a great game." So I'm probably going to be picking that up soon. For myself, I've been doing a little bit of creative writing. That's another thing I like to do. Is I write fantasy and science fiction, and I just wrote a short little, kind of a really short, silly story about a very mundane use of time travel, and uh, I'm iterating on it, and that's been going well. People who've read it have liked it. I just got to fix the ending, so that's what I've been doing for fun lately.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah, I guess I've been making math videos, which I will probably plug at the end during the where can you find their content or whatever section of the thing.
yeah, and those are great. I've watched just one of them, but it was really interesting. Speaking as somebody who hasn't done any meaningful math for a really long time, um, they're still worth checking out. I suspect I need to watch more of those. So, but this, however, is the comprehensive design review. In practice, they've all been quite long. I think the first was like 2.5 hours. I think the most recent one was over three, I believe. We split it out into a bunch of different videos. We had some sound issues, which are remedied now, but I fixed up the sound a
Hopefully,
little bit.
fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's true. We did some testing, and hopefully the sound should be fine this time. Uh, but yeah, so you can check out the previous reviews we did. But the idea is that this is not just a limited review, as you see a lot of those at the beginning of a set's release, where it's like, oh, this card is an A or a B or a C, and then there's some puns thrown in there if you're LSV. Um, but this is a lot more from the game design perspective. We get a lot of Wizards content from their perspective about what their intentions were, what their process was in designing these wonderful sets, and what they think make them work. But kind of having the the healthy perspective of not being paid by Wizards of the Coast, I think makes this a meaningful exercise in and of itself. Just by the fact that we're not collecting checks that say Wizards of the Coast on them. But also having been enmeshed in this game for so long, loving the game, and also having the benefit of hindsight, right? Like we can look back at the completed product, whereas they're in the trenches making it.
And if you
Uh,
think from this that we're very positively biased, just go listen to our Theros Beyond Death review, and then you will learn that we are not biased in favor of Magic design generally.
that's true. Yeah, that one was it. When I went into it, I was like, yeah, it was a fine set, but it ended up being a lot more critical than I originally suspected, and I think it was justified. However, Ikoria, I think we're both generally pretty high on. We're gonna break it down, just talking about it very generally, then go into the mechanics, um, and then just some overall design trends that we're seeing, various soapbox topics that we've got, and then look at some individual cards. So when I say exhaustive, comprehensive review, it is going to be wide reaching. You mentioned you've drafted it like 50 times. I've drafted it like 30 times and done some standard. We've played with the cards. I think that you have to play with cards before you can talk about their design conclusively. And now that the set's been out for a while, we're getting spoilers for other things. It's a great time to do this. Um, so let us begin. Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, new plane, new set. This is not a return to return of anything we've seen before. It's got new aesthetic, monster world, and not monsters like gothic horror monsters, but kind of the big Godzilla type monsters. Maybe a little bit of like Pokemon tropes with humans bonding with monsters and things like that. And just a really fun world. The design goal was, I think, just playing with monsters and making that fun. They in the design documents, that they've released publicly, they talk about learning from Rise of the Eldrazi and how that was such a fun monster set, but they didn't want the whole battle cruiser magic feel. And so that was one of their major design goals. The vision design was by Mark Rosewater, and the set design was by Dave Humphreys. So both of those guys are old hats at Wizards of the Coast, lots of experience. And I think it shows with how well put together the set is, while still being, in my opinion, very innovative. And we'll get into that a little bit. But first of all, what is your overall impression of Ikoria? Do you have any hot takes or thesis statements at the top?
So if we're talking about the plane of Ikoria, I think this is probably the area where I am going to be least impressed because, as you point out, Ikoria is trying to sort of like thread this needle between all of these other monster worlds because Magic is fundamentally a game about monsters. And
Yeah.
so on the one hand, it's trying to veer away from the Eldrazi sets and the Gothic horror sets, but it also, to me, is stepping very firmly on Ixalan, which was also a set about monsters. And so to me, it's hard to feel Ikoria, the plane, is something other than Ixalan without pirates.
Hmm.
And
Or vampires, but
or
it does.
vampires, sure. Yeah, we just took just that 1/3 of Ixalan and just blew that out into a set, is what it feels like to me. So I love Ikoria, as we'll talk about from a mechanical point of view, but to me, this set doesn't evoke any feelings of being in a particular world with a particular sense or anything of that sort that I think they wanted it to. And I'm curious to hear if you think it did in you.
It did for me, but mostly because I like the aesthetic a lot. And for me, I don't like uh, capital P magic plots so much. I like a lot more just the feeling of a setting and the general aesthetic because I think that's much better storytelling for a collectible card game where you're not seeing the cards in a specific order, you're just seeing them in any random order by necessity. And so in that case, like just the feeling and the tone of a set goes a really long way. The feeling of it being a vast world with a lot of possibility goes a long way, which I think is why I liked Zendikar so much. I mean, what's the plot of original Zendikar? I don't think there really is one, but it's a very captivating world. I think you do make a good point about them having to thread a needle, and like maybe this doesn't feel like the most unique world since we've just recently done the dinosaurs, monsters has been done. We've done a lot of humans and monsters in the same set already, so they do a lot of work to kind of differentiate themselves. But I actually am pretty high on the flavor. Like I like the world enough that I could totally see them returning, but hopefully with a more cohesive, coherent, linear story. In the research I did for this, there was an article where they go through the plot of Ikoria by showing the cards that show each story beat. And it was not very captivating or interesting. It's all based around one character who I think is visually only on a couple cards. And then there's a bunch of like journal entries from Vivian, which, okay, I understand that planeswalkers go to different worlds and maybe take notes on things, but that's not interesting to me, you know? Uh, so personally, I like the flavor in the world a lot. I'm a sucker for crystal aesthetics. And yeah, so I like that, but I think you do have a good point that it's not super unique because you're right. Like the word creature is a major type in Magic, so a world of monsters isn't that different from what Magic is already kind of doing.
Yeah, I sort of wonder if Ixalan was so unpopular that they were like, okay, well, we need a world that's like Ixalan but popular, so we don't have to go to Ixalan again.
Maybe.
Because,
What?
like, if this set had just taken place on a continent in Ixalan and more of these things had dinosaur amongst their list of 6 creature types, would it have felt off? I don't think for me it would have.
Hmm. Well, I kind of hate the linear tribal stuff of Ixalan. Like, well, I don't hate that, but I would hate it if there were more of that here. And that's one of the things that they shifted from early on when they were dealing with mutate is they had this like 5 different tribes. There was one for each color, and to mutate, you had to mutate onto the same creature type. And I think that would have made it feel even more like Ixalan, because similarly in Ixalan, you have 4 different creature types that widely affect the draft dramatically and how you view the set. And I think that would have done something similar here.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the human, non-human thing later when we're talking more about the set design rather than the plane. Uh,
Yeah. At the top, my biggest hot take is I think last time you said that Wizards hasn't made a great Magic set since original Theros. Uh, I disagree with that. There's some sets that came out after that I like a lot more, but this feels like the most recent great Magic set for a long while for me. It feels like what Magic is good at: new worlds, fresh, exciting new mechanics that feel innovative, especially after a year or 2 years of really iterative, samey play patterns and samey mechanics.
I definitely agree with that. I think this is a great Magic set in a way that we have not seen in a long time.
Yeah. I wonder how much of that has to do with complexity, which is another issue we'll talk about later, because it is also, to me, a very complex set.